In this video, we're going to learn how to do some math repetitively through the use of for loops. As you can see from this piece of code on the screen, we have a counter set up that begins at 1, ends at 0, increases in ones, and as it counts in the background, it prints the value of the counter on the screen. So if I were to hit run, I would expect the value of the counter to print on the screen, the end line to print, and then the value of the counter to go up, print again until we hit 10. So if I go ahead and hit run, it will do that. But at this stage, it's ending at 4. So the question is, why is it ending at 4? Let's try this again. So we're going to stop it. Let's take a look at the code. There you go. Now it's continued on to 10. Now let's say I want to sum up these numbers. I want to add all of these numbers together from 1 to 10 and find out what they sum up to. What I would need to do is I would continue to run the for loop, and I would continue to have the value of the counter change from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so on. But the question is, how do I capture that value and continuously add the numbers that are changing? So what we need to do there is create another box, another variable, another space in the memory with its own name that does the addition function. In this case, I'm going to call that integer a sum. So I'm going to create a new int called sum. And to begin with, I'm going to make it equal to 0, because before the program begins, sum should not really have anything in it. So I'm going to make it equal to 0. Then what I'm going to do is, inside the for loop, every time the for loop runs, starting from when the value is 1, I'm going to make that value come into sum and add on to whatever is already inside sum. In this case, sum is 0, so I want the first value 1 to add on to sum. To do that, the way you would write that in C++ is you would say the new sum is equal to the old sum, whatever the old sum is, plus whatever the value of counter is at this point. So the way you read line number 9 is the new sum is equal to whatever the value of the old sum is plus whatever the value of counter is. As you can appreciate, at every line the value of sum changes and the value of the counter changes, and then together they make the new value for sum at that point in line. So when the value of counter is 1, the value of sum is 0, the value of sum will be 1. When the value of the counter goes up to 2, the value of sum is 1, and they add up to 3, and so on and so forth until you get to the final run of the counter. So now what this is going to do is it's going to add up the sum at every line in the loop. Every time the loop runs, the sum is going to get added up. Now what I need to do is print out the final value. So I'm going to do cout sum. And in fact, what I wanted to say is I wanted to print out the word sum and then print out the value of sum. So we'll go ahead and run this. And there you go, it's added up all the numbers and given us the final sum. You can also do other types of math. So for example, if I wanted the value of the counter to double with each count and print, then what I would do is, instead of saying cout counter, let's say we don't want the sum anymore, we can get rid of that. I want the value of the counter to double before it prints. I would do counter times 2 in the print section. Don't just print the counter, print the counter times whatever it is when you multiply it by 2. So now if I run it, and it's taking a minute, so let's run it again. And there you go, it's multiplied the counter by 2 before printing it out. What if, instead of giving you a particular set of numbers, the user got to pick how far to count before adding up, say, a set of numbers? So let's say the program said start at 0, but count up to whatever number the user gives you. Like the user might say 10, and you'd have to do 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 10. But if the user said 1,000, you'd have to do 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 all the way up to 1,000. How would you do that? So what you need to do is you need to read in what number the user wishes to count up to. So let's call that number int num. And what you would do is you would say, print out a message, please, how far would you like to count? How far would you like to count? And then you would see in num. And then what you would do is, instead of counting from 1 to a particular number like 10, you would count to whatever the user has picked. You'd count all the way up to num. And then you would say, now I want you to calculate the sum at every line, the new sum at every line, by taking the old sum plus adding on whatever the new value of the counter is. And then you would say, now you can print out the value of sum here. And now when we run this, let's say I want to count up to 1,000, 500, 1,500. So that's how you would do a variety of different types of math. Whatever the math is, what you want to ask yourself is, do I want to do this particular piece of math with every number in the loop, or do I want to sum it all up in one place? So for example, if the program says work out the cube of a number from 20 to 100, then what you want to do is make the counter count from 20 to 100, and at each line make the counter multiply itself 3 times. So 1 would be 1 times 1 times 1, 2 would be 2 times 2 times 2, and so on and so forth.